Fit for Life is about embracing a holistic approach to health and wellness, particularly crucial during mid-career or halftime transitions. And this is a time where cultivating consistent and effective habits is key. However, by infusing an element of adventure, this journey becomes not just manageable, but fun. And in this interview with Kelly Howard, we explore how this balanced approach is not only attainable, but profoundly impactful. So listen closely to glean valuable insights and enjoy a conversation where you just might add some adventure to your life. This podcast is brought to you by DJ Works Media with resources and ideas for you at mid-career or halftime of life. Check out our online courses where we want you to not only start, but finish. Books available in all versions and songs available for immediate download with sheet music and instrumental accompaniment tracks. Our musicals are family-friendly with great music that's memorable and inspiring. Sign up at goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter for weekly updates. Now to our episode. Well, I'm so excited to have Kelly Howard with us today. And boy, she is called like a fitness guru, but she prioritizes fitness. And I'm going to start out by, Kelly, just kind of asking you some of your background, because you've got a varied background in business as well. And you talk about that you've failed at fitness before. And how did that lead you to your current passion for fitness? Because at this point in our life, at mid-career, our halftime of life, our bodies are changing, aren't they?
So, yeah, you could say that.
So just give us a little bit of that background to start off with.
Sure. So this goes back a number of years ago. I was just turning 50 at the time. And I was at that stage where I had bought a new company. I had bought a new house. So I'm literally sitting on a bucket and a 2x4 in this new house, acting like the general contractor. My mother has had a stroke, so she's now in a wheelchair. So it's just that point we get there where it seems like everything's going on. What I did was I figured that I could still just dial it in, right? I've always been relatively active. And so I would work myself to the bone during the week. And then on the weekend, my company was an outdoor company. And so I would go out and I would just be like a weekend warrior. And I did this for several months, maybe a year, until one day I woke up and it was my wake up call, literally, because I couldn't get out of bed. I was in so much pain. I had to crawl to the bathroom. I crawled back to the bed and I just laid there. And one piece of me is like, oh my gosh, I think I'm dying, right? I'm like on hypochondriac.com looking for what's wrong with me. But the other side of me is going, you know what's wrong with you, Kelly? Your body, you can no longer get away with treating it the way you've been treating it. And that was, like I said, a number of years ago, went on to grow that company, sell it, so on and so forth. But that idea just never went away. And at the time, I made a lot of changes in the way I was treating my body. But I started looking around at all my friends and they were doing the same thing, right? Like we were all doing all the things and not taking care of our bodies. So that's where, that was my real wake up moment and what got me to where I am today.
Wow. Yeah, it just, when something like that happens, especially that's so drastic to where you have to crawl, can't move. That would be, that's pretty much, oh no, what's happening here?
It was an oh no moment, but my goodness, at the time it was, now it was the best thing that ever happened. It took me about 5 days. I'd never, I'd heard of people having stuff where they couldn't, their back hurt or whatever. That was not me. And so, but it was a true wake up moment. And, like all things in hindsight, was a good thing.
Yeah. A lot of times those difficult times end up being the point that we come to a point of real change. And so that, and launching the business that you have now, how fun,
Right.
because you're all about adventure too. We'll talk about that, of course. But you've owned a couple businesses in the past, actually owned them, which I thought was very impressive to be able to run these different companies. But your latest was an outdoor company that you sold. And did the adventure emphasis of that company inspire you, like now with the business that you are having now, or that you focused on now with your own? Has that influenced you? And how is that all going for that other company as well? I guess they're prospering, right?
Yes, she's doing very well. We're still very good friends, and we text daily. So she's doing great with that business, which is super impressive because a lot of times I've sold 4 businesses, and generally speaking, it's hard for the new person to keep a business going, even if it's thriving. It's just, different energy, different thoughts. But to your point, yes. So when I bought that business, I was not what I would call an outdoor person. I was somebody who went to the gym. So I was kind of a gym rat, and I did long distance skating. I was a long distance skate racer and some sailing. That's all I did. Like that was my whole thing. So I buy this company. It's an outdoor activity. So it's like hiking and backpacking and biking. And I hadn't been on a bike in I don't know how long, all the things. And I thought, well, all I have to do is just stay a little ahead of the people I'm leading, right? Like I've just got to figure this out. And I just fell in love. And along the way, like one of the things that happened was that I remember very distinctly prior to this company, sitting in my old home and saying to my partner, oh my gosh, you have to listen to this story about this kayaking trip. And if I was younger, that was my words. I remember this very specifically. If I was younger, I would want to learn how to whitewater kayak, right? So I buy this company and I'm learning all the things. And somebody, one of my members says, hey, have you ever heard of whitewater kayaking? And I'm like, yeah. Because I'm thinking this is just like way outside of, anything I can do. Well, actually, it has become my most favorite thing to do. So that if I was younger has taught me so much over the years. And I still bring that up today to the women I work with, because it's just like, it's just a little different. We just play differently, but we can still play.
Yeah, it's such a mindset. What you're talking about is such a mindset, because we just think, oh, well, I'm just too old to do that, or else, learning something new right now. Well, oh my goodness, why don't I just stick with what I know? There's a lot of that in your mindset.
There is, and the problem is that starts shrinking our world. I mean, it starts bringing our world in, because like, let's say that all of a sudden your knees are not doing so well. And now you can't do, like you used to run and now you can't run. So if you aren't fitness flipping, as I call it, if you aren't looking for that next best thing and trying new stuff, your world is shrinking. And that is like the thing I do not want to have happen. Like anyone I work with, I want their world to be like expanding. I want it to be bright and exciting and, growing. So, yeah.
And this is really the best time of life, because there's more freedom. You've bought and sold businesses. Many of us have had businesses for a while, and we're just expanding on them, building them, and enjoying them. And with fitness, now that you are on that same mindset. And you also talk about consistency. And I always say, consistency and persistence is one of my secret weapons in my work. It really is. But yes. But you talk about this with long-term fitness, and long-term fitness. I want you to describe that, because that's a definite mindset, that it's not just short-term. This is long-term fitness. And how do you help people through this that they've never even hardly exercised or they've done a little bit. They've joined a gym, and then, they're one of the many statistics that quit after the first month, whatever. if they've lasted that long.
Right.
So yeah, just what's that consistency like, and that sort of attitude?
So yeah, let's start with long game because that's a big
Yes.
piece.
Mhm.
Okay. We are, this may not be a very positive statement, but I'm just going to make this statement. Most likely, we're going to all live a long time. Modern medicine is really good. Its job is to keep us alive. Its job is not to keep us thriving. That's our job, because you meet people and you know people, we all do, where they're still here and they're still doing things, but it's like their world once again is shrinking in. They can't do the things they want to do. They can't do the things they used to do. My job in my world is to make sure that everybody thinks about the fact that it's what's being tossed around right now is the difference between what is it, lifespan and life. I can't even think of the word, but basically how well you're living your life. That to me is what matters. So yes, I think having a long life is very important. It allows us to do important things for ourselves, for the world, for those people that we love. But thriving during that long game is what matters the most. So even if somebody's never been active, or doesn't feel like they were active, most people, especially women, when I start asking them questions, all of a sudden they'll be like, well, yeah, I used to do X or Y or whatever it is. So they have been active in their life. They just don't see it that way. So my job is to like pull that out and then say, okay, how can you flourish for the next 20, 30, 60, 80 years? I don't care what it is, right? So the first piece to me is consistency. And where consistency comes in is there's this myth, I believe it's a myth, that we've had for a long time in our society. And it's this, no pain, no gain. Go big or go home. You can the only way to get fit is to go to the gym 5 days a week. Like there's so many absolutes, and those absolutes stop us in our track. Just like brakes on, right? So if you think about it a different way, what if you took small, and we know this one, small little steps, but on an ongoing basis? Don't buy into the whole idea that, next week will be better. I'll start next week because, life will get magically different. It's not going to. Life is going to keep happening. So start small, take those little steps. Remember that if you have small, consistent movement, then in 100 days, you're going to actually be so much further ahead than if you had dove in, gone big, did it all for 3 weeks, got injured, and now you have to start over again. So that's why I am so big on consistency, as in something that you need to do. And it's not just movement. It's all the things, right? It's all our health game. We need to learn how to sleep well. We need to learn how to eat well. We need to just, and I don't like using the word need, but need matters, right? These are things that matter. We need to learn how to de-stress. So, and we need to build community, because community will keep us healthy and vibrant.
And there are so many reports on that. And that's the social community. And for those of us who are, I'm in a kind of a field where most people think I'm an extrovert, but I'm not. I'm an introvert, and I can sit and focus and focus and focus. So developing relationships, intentional relationships, are extremely, extremely important. And I loved how you focused on the small steps, because that is, there are many studies on habits, like tiny habits and all of the, atomic habits. And I've written a lot about this. But the secret is putting those small steps in place and starting little by little by little, so you can have you end up having big rewards. You get to the place eventually, maybe at a little bit different time frame, but very, very solid. And that's where your small term, your small term, your tiny goals end up being your long-term goals. And so and that was kind of my next point, and how, what's the best method for achieving some of those long-term goals, and really, what sort of long-term goals should we be at this stage of our lives? Should we be attaining or our aspirations? It's you're talking about
Right.
consistency, but sleep and all of those things. But as far as fitness, what should our short-term goals be?
So I always tease that, you're never going to see a Cosmo cover that's like, the 5 steps to sexy consistency. It's just not going to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is that in the past, let's call our past in the past. A lot of what we were taught is that it's about how we look. It's like one of my clients said one time, she's like, "Oh my gosh, I always thought this was all about how I look. And it never occurred to me it's how I feel and what I can do." And yes, all of us, we care about how we look. We do. I mean, I don't think my mother at 86 in a wheelchair, she was still, asking me why I hadn't done my makeup that day because she had, right?
I totally get that. My mother
beautiful.
was gorgeous, and all the way to the end. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so we always want to look our best. And if we can think about, like, that's an external goal, like that's an outside of us goal, versus what if we had something more exciting, things that drive us, that actually get us excited so that it's easy to focus on that fitness, because it's different for all of us. Like, some people come to me and they do want to lose weight. And it's not just because of how they look, it's how they feel. It's their energy, and, it's a health thing. Some people come to me because, they've had a lot of aches and pains and they feel like this is it, we're done, might as well throw in the towel. But all of those things come from the same bottom line, which is that you can, and we can talk about that later, like doing some specific things. But first, having something that pulls you, having something that, you're moving toward. Like, in my mind, when we're worried about, like, how we look, we're running away from something that is somewhat painful at times. But if we're moving toward something that's exciting to us, something that lights us up, something that, whether it could be anything, it could be going on an adventure trip, or it could be like one of my clients was like, I just want to be that cool grandmother who can grab the kids and the grandkids and throw them around the pool. And they're like, yes, I can't wait to go over that house again. But we have to have those things that actually pull us, that are positive goals.
Right. That is a part of that purpose that you talk about, your why, and where you want to be. And I think that's a very important part of this. And this is the reason that I book active tours for some of our travel right now. And at this point, when you watch both sides of the family, I've been married for a number of years, but you watch both sides of the family. Now we've lost parents. And we realized that, wow, there's this window of time where we have more freedom, first of all. We're both still, we both love our work. We're both still working, but, and I'll probably never quit because I do something I can do anywhere in the world. But it's booking those sort of tours and sort of travel that we can stay active, we can hike, we can do all of that. And I tell you whose mindset it really has helped is my husband's, because he was a former professional athlete. And when professional athletes, their bodies start not doing what it was doing before, there's a real mindset there. It's a tough one. Tough mindset for many of those. And so booking things like this and having those goals, I loved the one where you said about the grandkids throwing them around in the pool. And you got to be careful. You're going to throw a shoulder out or something. So maybe you got to be careful. But there's just something about that, playing with those kids or being active enough and not just being stooped over or just sitting forever. And I always think about posture as well, how important that is. But all of that is fitness related, stretching related. It's doing a certain amount of workouts. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But talk a little bit more about, because you talk about this in your book. You have a book, and you'll talk about that at the end here. But about the why and about the purpose and what needs to drive you, and how important this is in the area specifically of fitness.
So I think that if everybody has what I like to call a North Star, if you have that North Star, and like I can tell you my North Star is that I want to be able to do all the things I love to do for a very, very long time. In fact, I would prefer to be able to do it up until the day that I'm no longer here, right? And maybe it shifts a little bit, right? But at the same time, that's okay, because you just have to be able to always find something that's exciting and attractive to you. When you have that North Star, then everything else follows. It's what I like to call a cascading effect of good. So if you've got something that you know is pulling you, right? You know that lights you up, then you make different choices. You make the choice to do the consistent movement. You make the choice to eat differently. Like right now, we just started something I do with my group called Sugar Freedom. And Sugar Freedom is that 30-day program where everybody drops the sugar for a while, drops the alcohol, drops the processed food. It's never exactly fun at first. But when you do it, and when you keep in mind that the reason you want to do it is because having gotten to the point where it becomes addictive to people, it is a show stopper when it comes to health. So if you're pulled forward toward health, then it's a whole lot easier to go, you know what? Yeah, today I am going to make that decision. Today I am going to do that thing. For me, like, I mean, today I keep my schedule on the wall. Today I am doing, these workouts, and it just makes your mindset follow that North Star that we love. And North Stars can be anything for everybody. I mean, sometimes I'm like, a North Star could be a passion plan, like for you and your husband. I mean, that's huge, because I know exactly what you're talking about when it comes to an athlete who, especially when they were professional and their body took a beating. That is a big change, like a big change for people. And being able to find something that's interesting and, lights you up, and you get to go do it, and you're moving still, even though you're moving differently than you may be used to. It's okay. It's okay, because movement is movement.
Right. And your point about that, and getting back to the professional athlete, this does not only apply to our stage of life. I have one of my daughters-in-laws. I had two sons getting married last year, so it was a big year for that. But one of our sons is a professional athlete. He's in a softball field, but they fly him everywhere. And then he married a gal that was also a professional athlete, but she blew out both of her knees in basketball.
Oh, no.
And I had actually interviewed her. The mindset, it was very, very difficult. And she said she has young friends that can't seem to move on, because that's all they had, this box, and everything was planned for them. And that's all they really want to do or could do. And to be able to have different goals is just such a mindset. And I think it doesn't matter what stage we're at. And when we start thinking, oh, I just can't do that anymore. And I am, okay, so what else can I do? Well, I'll just watch these shows on Netflix or Apple Plus, whatever we're going to do. It defeats the purpose of just being able to have energy. And actually, the good thing is that she found something that she loved and is passionate about. But there are a lot of people that in that situation that have not. And I mean, if you're listening to this and you're in that camp, or somebody in that camp, it's important to listen to podcasts like this or messages like this that encourage you that yes, there is life after you've been crawling on the floor and you can't, move for 5 days. There is life after you've blown your knees out. There is life after having a certain plan for so long. And there is life after the age of 50 and even after the age of 60 and even after the age of 70 and on. There's so much if we take care of our bodies. There's unexpected things that happen. They just do. But yeah, it's that mindset. I loved that you talked about that and about that North Star, putting something in place.
Yeah, something that really, really matters.
Yes.
And
yeah.
just to the whole idea of injuries. So, this is something that I think it's like the last maybe really quiet chapter in the book or something, but I'm like, sometimes you might get hurt. But it happens. Like when we're active, we do occasionally have not just aches and pains, but things that happen. It's such an interesting phenomena because for years and years and years, this has happened to me where a friend of mine will be training. Like I had, who comes to mind right now? She was training for a triathlon. I'd been cheering her on. I've been helping her train, and I've trained people that do long distance biking and stuff like that. So I'm helping her train, and she got kind of quiet. Like things were quiet for about a week. Hadn't heard from her, and then she calls me, and she's sobbing. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, she's fallen off her bike. She's on the side of the road. What's going on? And she's like, I don't even remember what it was now. I heard something and I can't exercise anymore. And this is super common because what happens is that our brains get addicted to exercise. Like our brains love exercise, right? It's releasing all the fun stuff and, and tamping down the things that we don't like. So if you end up with an injury, know that it is probable that you're going to be dealing with some sort of depression. And it's not that you're depressed, it's your brain is depressed because your brain loves to move. And then also know that you simply have to find an alternative movement at the time. And a couple years ago, I went through it was a strange year. The first 4 months of the year, I had surgeries, skin stuff removed from my legs where I couldn't use my legs, right? They were like, no hiking, no biking, nada. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, what am I going to do? So, I figure something out, finally get, the okay. And what do? I break my arm. Sorry.
Oh, no.
I shouldn't laugh.
Well, you're laughing now, probably not at the time, right?
At the time I was like, seriously?
Yeah.
This
really?
is crazy.
Really?
But, right. But I was so lucky because I knew what was going on. Right. I knew what was coming. I knew what was happening. I knew how to fitness flip.
Right.
And we just have to do that because things will occasionally not, go great.
Stuff happens. Yes.
Stuff happens. Yes. I mean, it just does. But if I could tell you one other story about this, because this is a good one. I had a client who came to me and she had broken her wrist. Just a break, no injury or no surgery or anything else. She'd broken her wrist 6 months before. The wrist still hurt. She was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. My wrist is hurting. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. So let's start moving. And, after a while, she got right back into who she was. And then she becomes this amazing pickleball champ. She's like taking dives for pickleball and she's having a ball. And she lands on her shoulder, breaks her shoulder, and her doctor said to her, well, it'll probably take you 3 to 6 months to get healed. And I said to her, why? It's just broken, right? It's just a break. That's 6 to 8 weeks. What if you could prove that doctor wrong? Not that I'm a doctor and know anything that doctors don't, but I do know that people heal. So we did everything that she could do. We did everything. We threw everything at it. 2 months later, she was back out on the pickleball court and having fun. So no, it's possible. Okay.
Yeah, that's And it's interesting because as we question and do our own little research, it's important to do this. It's important to do this with doctors. They want us to do this. And I think it's important to do some of our own research and it with the mindsets as well, and not just accept, oh, well, now I'm just going to be down, 3 months, and then you're going to put on, 10 pounds, 15, whatever you're going to do with no movement, whatever. But, keeping active in other ways that you can, like you did that, you kept active in other ways. You just couldn't be out in the sun for, on your legs with the skin areas, but there's just things that we can do. And just, I always say when one door is closed, there's a window. And if the window's closed, there's a little crack in the wall. you find little areas that you can work in. And there's just such wisdom in that, but it's also a mindset that we need to take on. So that's great advice. I'm so glad that you mentioned all of that. So you talk also about, which I really loved this term because I talk about like layering and little steps. Again, those are those little steps, but you talk about layered accountability. So how do you associate this layeredness of doing little steps at a time? I'm assuming that's what you meant by layered accountability.
So let's think of accountability as like a pyramid. Okay. In the end, we all want to be like that person on the very top who's 100% accountable to themselves all the time, right? We are in certain things and we aren't in other things. So that's when the idea of having a whole pyramid of accountability, a whole bunch of layers that allows you to, you start on the bottom, and the bottom could be, that layer might be, oh, I'm going to use a fitness app, and I'm going to, I don't know, I'm going to, watch these fitness videos online or whatever it is, right? So you've got that bottom like accountability. Then your next layer might be, I'd like to do some sort of event. Like I'm going to do a race. I'm going to do a 10K walk or a 5K run or whatever it is. So you sign up for that. Right now you're accountable, not just to yourself, but to something that you've signed up for. And maybe the next step is your next accountability might be, you get a coach. There's lots of different levels that this could be, but you do that, or you bring in your community. That's one of the big pieces in what I do is just this whole idea of accountability. And we have a community. And I'll tell you the way I use the community is that I'm pretty good. Like, 90% of the time I'm doing what I need to do. But then there's that day when I have to start really early and I exercise in the morning and I miss my exercise. And I know that I stink getting exercise in the afternoon. So I'll go out to the accountability group, text everybody and go, okay, I need to get my workout in by 4:00. They're just dying to like text me at 4 to see if I did it right. And so that's another level of accountability. But you just keep moving up and keep moving up. Classes, signing up for classes is one. Signing up for a gym is good, but a lot of people just skip going. It's easy to pay for. So like signing up
it's easier
for classes,
to pay for than do. Yes.
Right? It's so much easier to pay for. But you find those things. And sometimes, sometimes you need to sign up for something that's just a little painful, right? Like if somebody's going to work with me one-on-one, then they're not going to miss their classes, or not their classes, but their calls with me. They're going to do everything because they just spent money, right? So that's the whole idea of layered accountability is find several ways to keep yourself accountable. And that's moving toward that, apex at the top. But yeah, that's it.
That's great advice. With that, I loved it that you mentioned work out early. I've just got to get it in early. Otherwise, it's just, I'm not an afternoon person. My husband is, but I'm not, his body doesn't warm up as much, but that's the way I kind of wake up and get going. And then starting to book in things that'll push me a little bit more. There's a neighborhood group that's going, they take a 5-mile walk and a lot of it's up hills.
Oh, nice.
And the first time I did it, I was dying. I just thought,
oh, sure.
Because
it was something new.
Oh, I could just barely make it up this hill. And I got our little dog who's doing all of these little steps, doing a lot better than I am. And, but it's now I've tried to start booking that in once a week because I know it's going to push me. And I know these ladies, I'm going to end up going, okay, I got to keep up with them. I don't want to be like the very, very last, which I'm the last, but at least I'm keeping up.
Right.
But it's a challenge there just to put that forward, to do something a little different, that it changes it up for your body as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Your body and your mind. Like,
Yeah.
I am capable of doing like the same thing over and over for a very long period of time. It's just something I've trained myself to do. But I know that my brain gets so excited when we're doing something different. It's like,
yeah,
woo!
well, it's that, but you go, okay, can I really do this? And now I know, okay, what's the last hill that we're doing? Oh, this is the last hill. That's good. Because I know then it's this little goal. There's another little goal. And sometimes you have to say that when you're just doing a regular workout. Oh, well, this is the last 5 minutes. I know I'm going to do this. The stationary bike, I have stationary bike as well, because with as much as rain as we've had here, it's lately, it's really nice to have that stationary bike and inside and to be able to get that done. So, but it's all of that mindset. I loved that layered accountability, though, just starting little by little by little. And there's something else that my husband did for me, and I just asked him not too long ago that maybe we need to do this again for my accountability. And he's one of my big accountability partners, because we have coffee every day and we're at the stage, and that is a very important part of our time. I kind of bounce so many things off of him. But he had given me these workout, I wrote them down on index cards when I was going to the gym every day. And this is before all of this shutdowns and everything happened. And I was rotating them, and I felt like, wow, I was in so much better shape, because there was those cards were my accountability.
Yeah.
That was it. I had to go through all of those repetitions on those cards. And then all of a sudden I sort of threw those cards away, because I thought, oh, it's going to all change. And, having something like that, the people are just very important to have in your life for accountability. But if what you can do right now are index cards, something to give yourself some accountability, that, I need to do this. This is Monday, this is Tuesday, this is whatever that is. And if you skip a day, well, you'll have a day off, and that needs to be, fill it in there. So I think that accountability, so important for fitness. I'm so glad that you had brought up that. I love the term layered accountability too. That's great. So yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, this has been so good. Callie, I'm so glad that we were able to schedule this in. You're a busy lady. But I want you to say something now as we sort of wind this down, and then we'll make sure people know how to contact you. But what is one thing, if somebody's listening to this and they're going, I really need to start getting back in, man, it just sounds overwhelming. What should somebody do that's listening to this that maybe says, that really makes sense. I really want to stay. I'd like to, play with my grandkids, or I'd like to, do this active tour where we're biking or where we're hiking. What can they do right? What can most everybody do right now as a big takeaway for them? That's a big question.
Well, I would say if we couldn't make it two-sided, like the first side is the brain, and you can get back in shape at any age. You can. People ask me all the time, do you think I can get muscle at this age? Absolutely. And it's a whole lot easier if you start today than if you start next year. Our bodies are changing pretty quickly, and we can stop that change from going downhill and turn it around, but only if we're willing to take the mindset that, yes, okay, I'm playing the long game here. And then the flip side of that, the actual movement side of that is, this is writing it down. This is one of those accountability pieces, is making a like your index cards, making a schedule that is real. Okay. And the way I mean that is that people will occasionally say to me, at least the first call, well, I think next week I'm going to do like 2 walks, and maybe I'll try some resistance bands, and I'll do a little bit of the mobility. I'm like, cool. Okay. What days, when, how much? let's get the nitty gritty, because if it's not written down, it's not real. It's simply not real. You can start as small as you want to start, but you have to be willing to write it down, check it off. That's another one of those accountability pieces. Most of us are, to-do list checkers, right? And be willing to start moving. Have a minimum daily movement, like an MDM. Doesn't matter. Just 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I don't care, but you got to start moving.
I love that. That's, you've got to keep moving too. You just have to. If you stop moving, the body's going to it's going to shut down. It just will.
It does.
Yeah. So
it does. And we lose muscle very quickly at a certain age. And so it's a reality, y'all.
I noticed when I stopped doing certain exercises, even with my arms, and I do a lot of video work, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I've got the flab. And it's just something I never wanted, and I've never had. I've got tiny bones, but it was surprising to me, but it was just the way I was working out. And it wasn't just something that automatically just happens. It was something that I wasn't regularly putting in certain repetitions. And usually that's some sort of weight bearing exercise. Right. And it doesn't have to be a lot, but just getting onto some program. I mean, if somebody wants to work with somebody like you, or with a trainer, or with somebody that'll put those index cards in place for you.
Right. I mean, the index system.
Just a little. Yeah, it really does work. That's the accountability. It's like having, a calendar in front of you and go, well, I got to do this today, or just, I just right onto that schedule. So this has been wonderful. How can people find out more? I love when you talked about, putting the schedule in place. And I love some of those books too that have that in place. Going here, start here. But you have some other resources. How can people contact you or get to know a little bit more about you? And I put out show notes with every single one of these. Just look at that. Your links will all be in there. Sometimes I write articles, not always, because I'm actually accepting more podcast interviews these days. But for those that are listening, how can they reach you, and what can you give them?
Easiest way to get hold of me is just my website, fitisfreedom.com. Like that's it. Everything, all roads lead from the website. And to your point, we have a gift for all your listeners. It is my book. It's in an ebook form, but it's free to download. Okay. When you download that book, you're going to find that there's a bonuses section. So if you go on that bonuses section, take the quiz, that quiz is going to give you a very, very, very specific way to get started right now with where you are. Because what I've noticed is that if somebody's starting from 0 versus starting from, 50%, we're different. So you just take the quiz. It'll tell you, do this a number of times a week, and these are your different options. And then you've got a place to start, because it is easier to go and begin when you've got a little bit of a list.
That is so, so very valuable, because people don't know where to start, or if they're going to or they start too big and they can't keep it up, or it's like, they do a certain day of exercise and then they can't move for 3 days or something. Right. And, that's, very important not to start at that level, but, to be able to have a resource like that at least gives you, somewhat of a guide that you can get going and easy. And so thank you for making it easy for our listeners. I have downloaded your book and I've gleaned some things already from it. It was, it's excellent. It's easy to download, actually. So people don't have to be scared of that with all these download things these days, but it's safe download. Yeah. Yes, it is very, very fast.
It just comes right off my website.
Yeah. Very safe download. But it's, but having that quiz at the end, that's a very good in the bonus, as a bonus. Wonderful. Well, Kelly, this has been delightful. I'm so glad we were able to schedule this in. These are so much fun for me to do. I just really enjoy this platform. When I started in my business, there was nothing like even podcasts going. And now there's just there are so many options here to help people. And that's why I'm still doing what I'm doing. I didn't want to retire. I've expanded my area into, a lot of, as well as the music, but as the speaking and the producing part as well. Big part on producing, and love it. And also gives me freedom. So that's a really, really important part. And that's an important part at this point in our life. So
it is.
We're all on the same train going in the
That's right.
So, well, thank you again. And thank you all for listening. This was an absolute pleasure. And I will look forward to I'm here at least once a week, if not more. Make sure that you follow our podcast and write us a review too. That's always fun. We love those, and people that do that. It adds to the momentum, and that's helpful for all of us. So thanks again, Kelly, for being with us.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody who's listening.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us. It is because of our wonderful listeners like you that we keep going strong week after week. We'd love it if you'd share and follow us to not miss a single show, and even write a review. You can also find all of our articles, products, and links at womenathalftime.com.